Were you able to get hold of Scott? It's almost not working for the it's almost not working for the streaming. Oh, yeah, there's some good ones.
Yeah. Your mustache game.
That's okay. That's probably that. Then it probably really is wisdom. Look at you. Treated wood or something like that. Thank you. It's a 1970, like, this was the Jesus movie song. Yeah. Is it? I was trying to, when I think about I
Still waiting for something to happen.
Okay. Is anyone not here who you were thinking they're on their way, they should be here any moment? I want to care more about people than time.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're gathered today to thank God for the life of Daniel Lee Venzke, but I always called him Dan, and some of you called him Dad, and Papa, and other names. Last Thursday night, so a week ago, Carol and I and Dan were on a Zoom call. We were going through the premarital process, getting ready for their marriage on June 30th, and when we hopped off of that Zoom call, we said, I'll see you next Thursday night. That was our plan. And instead, we are here. It's been quite a week for all of us. Dan was pulling into traffic and he got T-boned. And I'm sure that many of you have thought back, like I just shared, you thought back to the last time that you saw Dan trying to catch up our bodies with what has happened and our emotions with what has happened and our mind with what has happened. It hasn't been easy. And on the one hand, we know that life isn't going to be the same without Dan here, and you already miss him. And on the other hand, it's almost hard to believe that he's gone. It almost feels like he should just walk right in and sit down at his spot and come on, Dan, sing us a song that you wrote. And so everyone's mental and physical and emotional process with this is going to be on a different clock. I've already heard tonight, and this is where some of you are at, you're carrying the burning questions of why, all of the why questions. Some of you are just carrying deep sadness. Some of you are numb. You've had the sadness, but right now it doesn't feel like anything. Some of you are feeling gratitude for his life and just what a special person he was. And I think all of us in this room are feeling deep love for Dan. And in the background, there's this resurrection hope. There's this longing for a world where everything is made new. A new heaven and earth, a world where there is no more diabetes or cancer or broken bones or car wrecks. We're longing for that world full of creative songs and creative crafts like are on the back table back there, and inspiring novels and a world full of love. And here we are. We're gathered remembering Dan, and it's okay to feel any and all feelings wherever you're at. We're not gathered, we're not doing what we're doing here tonight so that we can try to change how you're feeling right now about it. We're gathered to be in the presence of God with those feelings, whatever they are. So if they're tears, let them roll. If it's laughter, let it rip. If it's relief, if it's regrets, if it's grief, if it's disappointment, if it's numbness, if it's celebration, if it's gratitude, all of it. There's no beating yourself up during this time like, oh, come on, my emotions aren't behaving the way I wanted them to. The imprint of Dan is on all of our lives, and it really can't be captured with words. We're going to use a lot of words by the time we're done tonight, but there's no way that we can really capture everything that Dan was. And so also no beating yourself up as we go through this and we have this opportunity. You get to share some stories if you forget something you wanted to say, or if your emotions get away from you and either you stood up to say something and now you're crying, or you wanted to say something and you can't do it. All of it is, here we are, God, right now in this space. So let's open with prayer. God, here we are, and here we are with our love for Dan and all of those emotions and all those questions and the feelings. Holy Spirit, we thank you that you meet us right here in this place. Jesus, we thank you that you are the resurrection and the life, and we're reaching our arms out to you and asking for that comfort that you promise and that hope. God, thank you for Dan. He meant something very special to each one of us. In Jesus' name. I don't know how many people know this, but there are two people out there in Radio Land, and I don't know if any of us know their identity, but they are looking at the world tonight through new eyes because two people got one eyeball from Dan, like organ donor. And so they are looking at the world from Dan's perspective, even as we look at Dan's face there. Someone out there is looking at the world through a new perspective. And so as we read these next scriptures, I just invite you to be listening for the message, not just from Dan. I think Dan was listening to these same scriptures, but listening for the voice of God. How does God want me to see this life in this world through new eyes, through fresh perspective? So, it was just before Passover festival, and Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. He had got off a Zoom session. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal. He took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. And now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. A new command I give you: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. You all are the salt of the earth. If the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You all are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. We have a song from Dan's children, Tesha, Chad, Michelle, and Tiffany, Amazing Grace. And I want to invite you all to sing along so that you're not just listening, but you get to join in and participate. You get this.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Daniel Lee Venzke passed from this life on May 21st, 2023. Dan was born on January 11, 1951 in Oxnard, California, to Alvin and Evangeline Venzke. He was such a loving, gentle giant. He was a tinkerer, an artist, always creating something with his hands. He was a musician, always singing God's praises. He was a writer of books, songs, and poems. He was a leader, showing us how to walk in faith and trust in God's perfect plan. He was a comfort, always willing to listen and be a shoulder to cry on with grace and love. He was a hard worker, doing whatever it took to support his family. He was selfless, always ensuring those around him were cared for, fed, and comfortable. He was the most patient man we've ever known. He was a jokester, with some of the cheesiest dad jokes you could imagine. Each day he lived to be an example of God's love, and anyone he met could see the light that lived in him. He was gone so suddenly, but he lived so fully. We know he wouldn't want us to be sad, as he so beautifully expressed in a song he wrote and recorded before his passing. But I think he would be all right, if only for a little while we are sad, because of the void his absence leaves in our hearts. That void will heal, and we will always have the memories, pictures, videos, writings, songs, poems, artwork, and love he left behind. Daniel Lee Venzke was preceded in heaven by his father, Alvin Walter Venzke, his mother, Evangeline Hannah Mabel Venzke, and his wife, Noon Marie Venzke. He's survived by their 4 children: Chad Venzke, Chief Petty Officer, U.S. Navy, San Diego, California, with Crystal and 4 children; Tesha Johnson and husband David in Tillamook, Oregon; Tesha's daughters, Montana, with Sean in Albany, Oregon, and their 2 sons; and her adoptive daughter, Katie Bergio; Michelle Klein, with husband Stephen in Garland, Texas, and their 3 children; Tiffany Chapman, with husband Christian in Princeton, Texas, and their 5 children; his brothers John, Steve, Alan, and their families; his sister Tammy Joy, and his fiancée, Carol Ann Schmidt, whom he loved and planned to wed on June 30th, 2023. A celebration of Dan's life and accomplishments will and is being held on May 25th, 2023 at Etarts Friends Church. All who loved, knew, and appreciated this amazing man are invited together with the family and celebrate his homecoming. And here we are. I've been looking forward to this next moment because it's extraordinary. Dan recorded this in April of 2022, so a little over a year ago.
In the Father's house are many places. I'm in the place prepared for me today. I know that you can't hear me, but if you could, this is what I'd like you to hear me say. You still have me in your thoughts. You have me in your heart. You have videos and photographs. Hold on to that part of me. Hold on to the memories of the good times that we shared. Never lose sight of how much for you I care. Don't cry for me, I'm in a better place.
Oh, Dan. Dan wrote the following words. This is titled A Lifelong Desire. He says, wouldn't it be great to be famous? Through my years, I desired that enviable status, though the criteria to achieve it changed. While a teenager, I believed such renown could happen were I to excel in professional sports. But there were physical limits to my abilities and talents. My dream of playing games in stadiums full of appreciative fans had to find other avenues of fulfillment. Perhaps I could earn the appreciation of millions of admirers for writing the lyrics and music of a hit song that ascended to the top of the charts to inspire multitudes to learn the lyrics or join a worthy cause. For a season, I was convinced that patient meditation and persistent application would open the window of invention for a product that every human on earth would desire for its simple yet profound benefits. Such a success would move me up in the lists of the world's richest people. But more importantly to me, improving people's lives mattered. I even fantasized about my funeral, probably believing it way off in the future, so there was no reason for serious mortal thought. I envisioned a black hearse leading a procession of hundreds of cars loaded with mourners to the cemetery internment service, all there because my life had touched theirs in a meaningful way. As the years and the opportunities passed, my options for influence diminished. Perhaps I could write a novel that became the bestseller for months and months. The story would entertain even the most hesitant reader, while it inspired every reader to resolve to be more than they had ever previously imagined possible. Work on that volume continues to this day. To date, he says, you can type my name in a Google search and there are some entries, but not enough to judge that I'm famous by the standard measures. I'm not known or revered by millions, nor have I amassed millions in income. There are no sports records connected to my name. In truth, few of us become famous for those reasons. That we could not achieve those levels of fame does not mean that we are not famous in the most important ways. If only one person on earth counts us to be a dear friend, an indispensable ally, or a life-shaping mentor, we are famous to that person. We each have many individuals who hold us in esteem, including family, friends, coworkers, and other acquaintances. They would insist that without our presence in their lives, they would be diminished in significant, tangible ways. Truly famous people are those who value relationships, practice the golden rule, and encounter every other human being with the mindset, how can I help you? Wow, damn. And the Apostle Paul says it this way, love never ends. But if there are prophecies, they will be set aside. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there is knowledge, it will be set aside. Or Dan might say, if there are great athletes, they will fade. Where there are inventions, they will be forgotten. Where there are bestsellers, they will collect dust. For we know in part, we prophesy in part, but when what is perfect comes, the partial will be set aside. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But when I became an adult, I set aside childish ways. For now we see in a mirror indirectly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I have been fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Love is the only thing that's eternal. It's the only thing here that lasts out of everything that's being said. And it's been really interesting for me to listen to the stories that you all have told about Dan's life. And I keep hearing this theme over and over. Love's the only thing that lasts. Like, it's fascinating to hear you all talk about the family Christmases and what you remember. Because what you remember is not that Dan bought you a bunch of expensive gifts. The stories that you all have to share are the wild scavenger hunt that Dan created for the family and brought them all to the mall and sent them out, made this awesome, fun experience when he didn't have any money. And there's stories about the family adventure every Sunday afternoon looking for whales and mountain goats and spending that time together. And there's stories about Dan's handmade Christmas gifts when he spent hours and hours out there in the wood shop making sink for Tesha and a shelf for Chad with a spot for the hockey sticks and the baseball bats and making little doll beds for Michelle and Tiffany. And it's Dan helping Michelle cope the first winter in Texas with 80-degree weather, and oh, I miss the snow so much, and going out and surprising her by buying this big blow-up snow globe and putting it right in the patio so it looks like it's snowing. And these are the kinds of memories. I didn't ask you to say, hey, tell me some memories that tell me that love is the only thing that lasts. You all just told me that. It's Carol and Dan sitting on the glider, the porch together, and sharing these stories from their life, and Dan saying how much he respects Mike, your first husband, and his heart to provide for you and to care for you. And it's Chad telling me that Dan taught you how to be a man, but then going on to, instead of speaking of machismo or workaholism or money or muscles, then very next thing I hear you saying, you're speaking of patience and peace and mutual submission and servanthood and selflessness and tolerance and putting others first. And I don't mean to make Dan out to be perfect, because if Dan was here, I'm certain that he'd say, don't do that, it's far from true. But I need to point towards the lesson that I think he was learning all through life and what he was learning about his own lifelong desires. I think if Dan could wish for any kind of impact on our life, it would be that he would desire for us to lean more into love. Love for God and love for neighbor, because love is the only thing that lasts. And so I want to go on from here. We're going to do some memory sharing, but I want to invite you to hold that idea with you, even as we hear all the other stories that people have to share. If love is the only thing that lasts, how do I want to take that with me as I do tonight, as I do tomorrow, and however many days I have? So here's John. We're going to kick off this memory sharing time with Dan's brother, John.
Thanks so much to some of you who expressed sympathy to me for losing my brother Dan. Although we weren't able to get together very often, our hearts were intertwined through our many shared memories together, especially in our early years. I mailed a card to the family on Wednesday, so it may not have arrived by the time I'm sharing this with you, so I will include some of those thoughts in this brief message to you. My brothers Steve and Alan and my sister Tammy have many fond memories of our big brother Dan. Most of those times were growing up on the farms in Wisconsin. Dan, Steve, and I were quite young when our parents Alvin and Manny moved from California to Wisconsin. First we lived on a dairy farm near Milan, and later on a farm near Abbotsford. But let me talk about Dan. Like all of us who are trying to serve the Lord, we can remember when we chose to follow Jesus with all our hearts. Dan did that at an early age and continued to faithfully serve God to the best of his ability until the day he was called home to be with the Lord, where we can join him someday. Dan was a hard worker and a kind and generous soul. I honestly don't remember him ever boasting about what he had done, except in a joking way. He would give credit to God and to other people who helped him accomplish his projects. Dan did love a good joke or pun. There always seemed to be a twinkle in his eye when something was afoot. I remember him telling me he was outstanding in his field when he was standing in a field near the church he pastored in Wilson. When he got to work with him in Calvary Assembly in Stillwater, he loved to come up with fun ways to get the kids excited in Super Church. When he was using Robin Hood as his theme one month, he dubbed me Little John. I was never little, although I was 3 inches shorter than him. You couldn't talk about Dan without including June. They loved each other so very much, and I never remember seeing them argue. But sometimes June would look at him out of the corner of her eye, and you could tell she wasn't sure if she should trust what he was going to say or do next. It was always a fun moment. Both Dan and June were adventurers as they went from Minneapolis to Ohio, to Wisconsin, to Minnesota, to Wisconsin again, to Alaska, to Oregon, to Texas, to Oregon. I wonder what the conversation was like when they were deciding to move again. Maybe they were thinking, okay, this is really going to make our family wonder. Now what are Dan and June thinking? The shock factor. Dan and June raised wonderful children, and they instilled in them their own love for God. That love and faith in God continues as he has seen in their grandkids and beyond. Dan left way too soon in our limited understanding. But God does all things well and even is able to work all things together for good when catastrophe strikes. There's definitely more to Dan's story. There's a life continue in heaven, and we will join him someday soon, if we put our trust in God and serve him to the best of our abilities. Dan was a good big brother. He always encouraged me to do whatever I felt God leading me to do. And many times I've been following his example. Dan worked at the Kraft Cheese Factory in Milan, Wisconsin, and so did I. He went to college in Medford, Wisconsin for 2 years, and so did I. He transferred to North Central Bible College in Minneapolis, and so did I. He traveled with the Jubilaires music ministry team based out of Stillwater, and so did I. He fell in love with a wonderful woman of God at North Central and married her, and so did I, although a different woman. He played on the college golf team in Medford, and so did I. He became a pastor, and so did I. He ministered at Calvary Assembly of God in Stillwater, and so did I. He drove a school bus in Stillwater, and so did I. He became a church school teacher and a principal, and so did I. He and June raised 4 wonderful children, and so did Wendy and I. He had several remaining grandkids. He had several amazing grandkids, and so do we. He moved to Ohio, Wisconsin, Alaska, Oregon, and Texas, but I didn't. Although we did travel some very different paths, God had different places for us to go, and different people where we were to love and who we were to love and care for. Dan drove taxi and in Anchorage and became a pizza maker in Port Graham, Alaska. He pastored the only church on that island, a fishing community of 300, and he taught himself to play the piano while there as well. Well, I did that too. Played the piano. I have two amazing moments that Dan and June were involved with, and these are 2 of the most important moments of my life. When I was at the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point Medford Branch campus, I was struggling with whether or not I was really saved. June took time to listen to me and counseled me to believe in faith and not to rely on feelings. That helped me so much. My second favorite moment was when I asked Dan how he knew that he was called to be a pastor. He told me that a huge angel had appeared to him in the haymow when he was only 10. Not. He told me that he wanted to serve the Lord wherever God wanted him to use him. He stepped out in faith and became a volunteer for God. I discovered over the years that many famous Christian preachers and leaders did the very same exact thing, and so did I. God bless you. Our prayers are with you all.
I know that we've got some family members who want to share. Carol, I'm gonna read your piece now, and then I'll hand it over to you all. Carol wrote this, Dan's fiance. In these last few days, I have witnessed the man called Dan Venzke through his children, Chad, Tesha, Michelle, and Tiffany. Their unwavering faith, quiet compassion, strong fortitude, and a few corny jokes. It is beautiful to watch. I have witnessed a family that is knitted together with love, kindness, compassion, all deeply rooted in their faith. He not only left a legacy for his 4 children and grandchildren, but he also touched so many people by his quiet gentleness, unwavering faith, and his passion to serve. I only got to really know Dan for a short 7 months. In this time, I learned to laugh more, enjoy life more, and above all, always trust in the Lord. I will never forget the time we had and always thank God for what we shared, from the awkward proposal to his last day here on earth. I will watch his children and grandchildren carry on without Dan here, but I will be thankful knowing that a piece of him lives on in the beautiful family that he loved and cherished. To this I say to Chad, Tesha, Michelle, and Tiffany, this day I am so very, very proud to be part of the family and will try to show the traits your father has shown me through his love for me. We said at the beginning you're allowed to make people cry. You win, Carol. Which one of you siblings wants to share something, or do you want me to turn it to someone else first? Chad?
Do my best to get through this. Special is a word often used too many times, but with Dad, just doesn't seem quite enough. I can honestly say I learned many of the most important lessons in life from my father, and it didn't just come from conversations. Don't get me wrong, Dad could talk. He could preach, he could teach, but the biggest impact was the example that he set. He led by example. He showed us throughout his life how to walk a path without regret, a path to emulate, a path that we celebrate tonight. My father showed me many things, showed me how to be patient, to be kind, to be gentle, and when to be strong, to put others' needs before his own, to give up on his own dreams in order to realize the dreams of his wife and children. He was the strongest, most dependable man I ever met, without needing to raise his voice or his fists in anger. He was a safe harbor, capable of shielding us from the most chaotic storms life sent our way. And even so, he never shied away from giving us the hard truths, even when it was the last thing we wanted to hear, it would be that most important, impactful thing we needed to hear. His heart was bottomless, adding to his family at every stop he made in life. Daughters and sons, brothers and sisters, giving a family to those that had been without, and repairing the damage and dysfunction of others by showing what a family could and should be. Through my life, we shared many things. Our shared love of the Packers is one of my favorite memories from life, and one that I've happily continued with my own children. Watching the game with my dad and my boys is something I will always treasure. And while they may not have had as much time with him as I wish, I treasure these memories the most. We've been able to create over these last few years that he's been up here. His loss will leave a void in my heart that can never be filled. But I will take solace in these memories. Memories of my dad. Taught me how to be a father, a husband, a brother, a son, a friend, a man.
Our dad was a very even keel man. I remember as a father, as a dad, and daughter relationship, I gave them heck for a couple of years. And one day I got caught sneaking back into my bedroom window after an all-nighter with friends. And my mom was walking out to go to work. And she just said, "You wait till your dad gets you." And I mean, I was terrified. You know, my dad's a big guy, and he's a strong guy. You know, you don't mess with him, but it wasn't aggressive or angry that way. But it was like, you fear God. And we feared Dad. We didn't want to disappoint him. And I did. And so we dropped Mom off to work. He took me out for ice cream. And we sat in silence and we ate that ice cream and it tasted so bad. And at the end of it, he just looked at me and said, "You can do that again." And I said no, and I never did. That was my dad. Our family is strong. Our family is very close. Our family got bigger with Katie and bigger with Graham. When Katie came into my life as my kid, as our kid, we told Dad that he had a new granddaughter and you could have seen his joy for miles. And Katie has just been ever part of our family. And she loves him, and I don't know if she'll be able to say anything. But Katie, we want you to know he loved you so much. And that was who Dad was. And everyone I've talked to, everyone I have shared my dad with, loves him too. I don't think I've ever met someone who didn't like my dad. And I'm really grateful that you guys came. I'm so glad that you got to meet my dad. I'm so glad that you got to be a part of his life and a part of our lives. Who's next? I'm the baby of the family. And the daddy's girl. He gave the best hug. I remember sitting on his shoulders, and the view from up there was pretty amazing. He was tall. He was steady and he was strong and he set an amazing example to all of us. But I think the biggest impartation that he gave me is that it's not about whether you believe in God. It's about how much you invest in your relationship with Him. How well do you know Him? How hard do you pursue Him? How real is He to you? So I just want to leave with this, and I just want to encourage you. Chase after Him the way that Daddy did. Know Him the way that Daddy did. Receive Him the way that Daddy did. Because He said, and I was reading from, he writes a lot, you guys know that. One of the things that he'd written, he said, when you get to heaven, some people say that you're going to go run around on the streets of gold, or you're going to go meet your family members, or you're going to, go bow down with all the heavenly host and all of these beautiful things. And he's like, I'm just going to walk up to God and we're going to pick up the conversation where we're at. And so I just imagine God and my daddy walking in the cool of the evening, just continuing to do life together just like he did on earth. And that's what I want to do as well.
I'll open it to anyone else who wants to share a word about Dan. Kids?
I don't know that I need that.
We'll do it for the recording.
I didn't know Dan real well, but we were kind of buddies. We had built a house and I had a bunch of redwood left over, and he'd come up and take a few pieces, and he did some nice work. It was really cool the way the three-dimensional stuff that he did was really excellent. But we've had some talks, and he was just a pleasure, really a pleasure, and an excellent example.
I still have some of that wood and I'm going to make use of it.
So, what Dan has left with his family as someone who came in late. I am his son's ex-wife. And his family, whether when we were married or when I'm not, still accept me, my children who is with Chad and without Chad, and they ask me how I'm doing. We share memories and vacations and drive across country to see each other. And even 10 years that Chad and I haven't been together, and you guys are still there. And I never feel left out. And I never felt like an outsider. You guys you kept us anyways. This is Dad's love. This is what he's taught this family. Is whether you are always the best, at your best, at your worst, even if you're not being very nice, they love you, no matter what. They're some of the most accepting people that I know. And I couldn't be happier. We love you guys.
I wish I'd have known he was a Packer fan. From just a few miles north of Abbotsford. And, we could have watched a couple games together.
Anyone else want to say a word, speak well of Dan? Wayne?
I'll try.
I was going to yell at you if you did.
I was a pastor like Dan for 25 years, and I probably preached 100 funerals. and attended 100 more. And I don't remember ever being in a service quite like this one. And I don't know whether it's you guys or you, but I suspect it's him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew he was kind of a remarkable guy. But I had no idea just how remarkable he was. I met him 2 years ago, right here in this little church. And there wasn't any laughter in my life because I had just lost my wife a month before coming in here. And there were 5 of us in that boat. One of them's sitting back here right now. And there was 2 other men who had both moved away. And then there was Dan. 5 of us who didn't have a lot of reason to laugh. And I sat in the back and I watched Dan lead worship and participate in a quiet kind of way that he does. And Aaron had a group of us standing kind of in the back, in the middle of the building back there. There had to be 5 of us there, and Dan was one. And I can never shut up when there's talking to be done. I do a lot of it. And Aaron does a lot of it. And there's a few others who were doing a lot of it, but not Dan. And I was struck by his silence. So after the conversation was coming to an end, I said, "You don't have much to say." I didn't really know. It was like the first time Dan and I ever had a conversation. He said, "Well, a long time ago, I had a pastor who said I need to be a lot more aggressive. He said, I'm way too timid." And I said, "You don't strike me as timid. You stand up there and lead worship. You recite poetry that you've written in public. You sing songs that you've written in public. You don't strike me as timid." He said, "No." I said, "No. You strike me as a very patient man and as a very kind man who waits his turn, and then after all the rest of us have finished blabbing, you thoughtfully step into the conversation and say something that really matters." And then he said to me, "You know, if that pastor all those years ago would have said it like that, maybe I wouldn't have carried this feeling that I'm timid for my whole life." And so from that moment on, we struck up this friendship and we started meeting every week. You know, he was just a broke down old man with a broke down old van. He would show up at Denny's. He'd leave the house in the dark with his headlights on. He'd go to Denny's. He'd sit there. I have no idea. He'd sit there. I said, "What do you do?" "I come here and meditate. I come here and think. I come here and read my Bible." "Denny's parking lot? I like it here." And then he would go in and leave his headlights on. And then he'd come back out to leave an hour later, and he'd have to call me and say, "Hey, can you come and give me a jump? My battery's dead." And then we'd go back in and I would make him buy me breakfast. And he could sit there and watch me eat because I just gave him a jump start. And eventually, we got pretty close. And we started having the talk. How long you gonna wait? Think you'll ever fall in love again, Dan? I don't know, I'd like to think so. It's been a couple of years. I said, yeah, for me it's only been a few months. He said, yeah. And I said, what do you mean when you say, I love you? What's that mean to you? It's really bizarre how two grown men, and while I was in my 60s, was he how old is it? Was he 72? 72. He's a little older than me. What do you mean, old man, when you say I love you to someone? He said, what I mean, Wayne, is I want to care for that person. That's what I mean when I say I love you. I want to care for you. I want to take care of you in any way that you need to be taken care of. And I was just like, doggone it, every single time this guy's got these answers. And I'm keeping, I gotta find a harder question. And he'd write those silly poems. They weren't silly, they were some of the most fantastic poems I've ever heard. And he would try them out on me, and I'd say, you need to read that at church. I mean, you gotta share it at church. He'd write a song, and he'd write down at the Blue Heron, sing an a cappella. Just the two of us in the dining hall, Dan singing a cappella some song that he had just written. And the lyrics were great, but without the accompaniment of his guitar, he wasn't all that good. I thought he sounded a lot like Burl Ives. And I still do. In any case, the day came, and I'm going to shut up. He said to me, I think I found the one. I said, really? And by this time I had started dating Chris. And he says, how long are you going to drag your feet? I said, man, I don't know. I'm about half scared. And he said, what are you scared of? I said, I really, really, really like being the boss of me. He said, yeah. And I said, there's just a lot of things, that I just don't know how it's going to work. And he's listening. And I gave him a long list of why I was dragging my feet. And he said, but when you love someone, all those little things don't really matter. They can all be put aside when you choose to love someone. And he told me, I want you to know I'm engaged to be married. And however many months ago that was. And I was just like, there you go again. Anyway, Dan and Carol, some of you don't know, they came and spent the night at my house one weekend. I chaperoned. There was no foul play. I surrendered my room up to Carol, and Dan and I bunked upstairs. And I made sure there was,
Doors were closed.
doors were closed. Nobody got in trouble. Anyway, what a pleasure. What a pleasure to meet you all. And after tonight, I feel robbed that I only chose to spend one morning a week with him, or one morning every couple of weeks. If I would have known just how remarkable he really was, I would have, Dan, were you in town? Let's have coffee. Let's get together. Because, there's a word in the dictionary. I've preached this to this church before. The word is indelible. And if you look it up in the dictionary, the word indelible is defined as leaving a mark that cannot be removed. And there's only a handful of people in my life that have left that kind of mark on me. And your Dan is one of them.
So when most people think of grandparents, in my opinion, like the stereotypical grandparent is like the ones who are like they have old TV and they like live in the apartment and they don't really like know their children very well. But my grandparents were so much different. They were like they got into the deep conversations with you. They took the time to get to know you and know you well. They did things with you, bonded with you, and we were always like looking for it. Like, can I go see you? When can I go see you? And it was really unexpected what happened, and I just wish I could have talked to them more.
All right.
We have one more song that we're going to sing together, and then we're going to close and eat a whole bunch of good food together. So I hope you will all stay for that part.
Oh, Aaron, can I get that one more?
Yes.
So we brought, before you leave, we got on that table on the right-hand side, those are all things that we would like you to take one as a memorial, if you want to, of things my dad did. So they're things he was going to sell at the market, things that he has worked on, he painted, he created. So I'd like you to feel free to go and pick something off that table for you if you'd like.
Autumn, there are some really cool art kits there that maybe they can do. All right.
What am I doing here?
And now seeing that the earthly life of our brother Dan has come to an end, God, we commit his spirit into your hands. Birth to birth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And we are confident of the resurrection to eternal life through our Lord Jesus Christ. Now may the Lord bless you, may the Lord keep you, may the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you all peace. And we all said, Amen. Please stay for cookies and coffee and milk. That was included in the order. And I'm thinking if we can just kind of move some of those chairs off to the side, we'll have plenty of stand around room.